Hello everybody, and welcome back to another Donkey lore video. You may have noticed we got a new whiteboard, okay? We've upgraded the whiteboard. It's nice and big, it's double-sided, it swivels over, pretty big upgrade. So I hope you guys are excited because the whiteboard videos are going to get better and better and better. Also, please excuse my outfit for today. I'm wearing sweatpants. It's laundry day, okay? Not looking my greatest. But we're not here for my outfit of the day. We're here for the crazy tinfoil donkey theories. So today we're talking about the Equilibrium dungeon lore, particularly the lore associated with the dungeon's armor set, that being the Sage Protector armor set. And I believe this armor set, the story being told within it, is building up Nezarec's future return to the Destiny story, as well as Nezarec's overall influence over the Dredgens going forward. So within this video, I'm going to start off by breaking down the lore that's present within the armor, highlighting the most important aspects, and then we're going to go into the theory section, put together all the pieces that were laid out within the armor, and I'm going to present to you my thoughts on why Nezarec is coming back. So let's flip this whiteboard over and let's start the breakdown. So to start off, in the helmet, we're introduced to a scion named Yedic Ain, who I'm just going to call Yedic for the remainder of this video. Yedic works on Seray's ship. Saray is the Dredgen that is the final boss of the Equilibrium dungeon, and yeah, Yedic works for him. And Yedic is sending these messages to Rao, who's the leader of the Totality Division Syndicate on the Tharsis Junction. And in the helmet lore, Yedic talks about how Saray is building a throne world using the help of scions and psionic technology, with the hopes of, escaping death, right? And also on the ship, the Malphus, Saray is training a new generation of Dredgens. Saray himself is actually a pretty new Dredgen as well. He was recruited and trained by Bael, and now he's responsible for the Malphus ship and training a new fleet of Dredgens. In the Arms lore tab, we get a vision from Yedic. And the vision is pretty important for my theory regarding Nezarec's return, so I'm going to read it out for you guys really quickly so you guys can get the full picture of the vision. So it reads as follows. Enforcer Rao, a vision came to me on my last shift. An egg fell from its nest and broke on hitting the ground. What spilled from it was not yolk, but dust, a seed with no life in it. Its mother then plucked the feathers from her breast, peeled away the skin, and broke the bars of her ribcage. She pulled out her heart and laid it into that dust, wet and purple, then dry and gray. Small things with small lives, but somehow enormous in my memory. I see her still, that mother, that egg. I know I'm a single bacterium upon that broken ship. In general, when it comes to the scions, their visions are quite important. Scions have immensely powerful minds to the point where they can influence the world around them through telekinetic abilities, through psionic energy, through their minds. And visions from scions are known to have prophetic properties. They can tell the future or tell potential futures, through potential different timelines. So whenever we get a vision from a scion, it's pretty important to take note of it and listen to what it has to say. So this vision is about a bird, its egg, and its heart. Later in that lore tab, Yedic talks about how they feel life in soul. How, based on their psionic abilities, they could feel the life present within soul, and that Yedic fears for life in soul. I'll quote the exact text. Yedic says, Enforcer, I fear for that life. What is vast might still be vulnerable. So Yedic is fearful for life in soul because of how vast it is. It is so vast that it might be vulnerable. Moving on to the chest, we get our first bit of evidence for Nezarec's influence of the Dredgens. Saray notes that the Dredgens on board the Malphus, on board Saray's ship, are listening to and responding to whispers, and that there are shadows that cover all of the Dredgens, and that the scions are avoiding these Dredgens because they don't like the voodoo. They don't like the shadow and the whispers. Let me read that excerpt from the lore for you guys. Sarai listens to the whisper in the dark and speaks to it in turn. His named apprentice shouts at it to demand power. His students learn to bear its voice or die. We avoid the Dredgens for fear of the shadow around them. No scion has volunteered to study with them yet, and none of us want to be cut down for their practice. So there's whispers and shadows surrounding these Dredgens, and the scions don't want anything to do with it. Moving on to the legs. Yedic accounts how Sarai is growing in both power and growing physically in size. You know, this is the reason why, despite being a human, at the end of the dungeon, we see Sarai being giant. He's a huge person. And that's because he's growing in size and strength due to the influence of the whispers that he is responding to. And Yedic talks about how she wishes that the new power that Sarai has destroys him. She wishes it's too much for him to bear and it kills him. But she's fearful that something will take his place, that when he dies, something will take his place. Yedic writes, Sarai swells with greater power daily. Even as he loses his form, he's fraying like an old rope, growing stronger, mouthing along the whispers. I would wish for Sarai to tear himself apart, but I fear something worse would take his place. Something will make use of a dry seed on dead ground. Something that is not the bird's heart will fit itself back into the bird's rib cage. His project is more than I thought it was. It's more than a hiding place for one small death. It's a door, and there's something on the other side, a thought too big to fit in my head. If I tried to think it, my every cell would burst. Moving on to the class item, the final lore tab associated with the armor. It is a big 180 and a confusing change compared to the rest of the armor set. And that is because I believe Yedic is experiencing a new vision, right? I'm going to explain my reasons why I believe this in the theory section of the video, but to me it's the only explanation because it gets pretty weird. And the lore associated with this class item is so incredibly important, I think, to not only my theory about Nezarec's return, but also just the future of the Fate Saga overall. I feel like if I didn't read you guys the entire lore tab associated with the class item, I'd actually be like robbing you guys of very important lore for the future of Destiny. So I'm going to quickly read that for you guys, and then we're going to move on to the theory section. So the Sage Protector class item reads, Can you hear it, Rao? A thought like a gravity well, pressing down till we become diamond? I can't open the door. The bar's too heavy and my arms aren't strong enough. My mind isn't big enough. I think there was life in this system once. I don't know where it is. I can't feel it anymore. I walked into a room I thought was empty and there were 6 legionaries in it playing cards. I didn't feel their minds. They spoke and laughed and shouted at me to get out. And it was like clay figures speaking and laughing and shouting. There's a voice and it's getting louder. I think I might die trying to hear it. Will you tell the others about it, Rao? I've trusted your silence so far. I hope I can trust your speech. I wish you were here in the whispers with me. So Yedic is now experiencing the whispers. So now that I've laid out all the important aspects of the armor lore, I want to move on to the theory section and put all these pieces together to try and convince you guys why Nezarec is coming back. So the first bit of evidence that really spoke to me after reading these lore tabs for the first time was the presence of the whispers and the shadows that the Dredgens were experiencing. And the reason the whispers and shadows are so important to the lore associated with Nezarec is because shadows and whispers is actually a really common motif present whenever Nezarec is mentioned within the lore. So I want to read a quick excerpt for you guys from the Titan armor from Root of Nightmares. And it talks about a Dark Age Lightbearer, a warlord named Briar, and his first encounter with Nezarec. So this is from the helmet. It reads, Up ahead, shadows shifted in the sea of trees. I braced myself, sword held steady. Shivers traveled up my fingertips. electrified my arms, and settled as a chill on the back of my neck. "Who's there?" I could hear whispers all around me, from behind every tree. It was overwhelming, all-encompassing, indecipherable. The shadow swiftly closed the distance between us until it towered over me. It reached for me, and I stepped back. I remember the sinister laugh, the way it touched a primal fear deep within me. I was paralyzed, my mind flooded with whispers. Its wispy body lurched forward and slammed through me. I felt myself fall. The wind left my lungs, and for a moment there was nothing. An emptiness, the likes of which I had never felt before. So this lore tab accounts the first encounter Briar had with Nezarec. And if you go and read all the lore associated with the Root of Nightmares armor, both the Warlock, Hunter, and Titan armor set, you have this common motif within every single one of the lore entries of whispers and shadows associated with these acolytes of Nezarec, these people who experienced torment from Nezarec. They all experienced whispers and shadows. The next bit of evidence is associated with the scions and psionic energy. So within the lore, there's some subtle hints that scions and Nezarec have some type of history with one another. We read in the Warlock armor associated with Root of Nightmares that there was a group, a sect of scions that worshipped Nezarec. And Nezarec, as this being, this god of pain and god of fear, is this being that is empowered and strengthened by pain and fear. And where anywhere there is pain or fear present, Nezarec is there to feed off of it. And we read a couple of different accounts of Nezarec from a variety of different species within Destiny lore. You guys might remember back in Season of Splicer, Mithrax tells the story about Skira the Watcher, and how Skira was this force that tormented the Fallen, or the Elixni, I should say, that tormented the Elixni and was fed off of their fear. And it wasn't until the Elixni stopped fearing Skira that Skira disappeared. And although we don't have any confirmation that Skira is Nezarec, considering the fact that Skira, fed off of the fear of Elixni, it is likely that it was Nezarec, right? Because Nezarec fits the exact same characteristics. And so we know that Nezarec has been all over the place, has lived many different lives, because we know there are multiple different tombs of Nezarec. He's died and come back to life multiple times, and he's influenced and tormented a variety of different species within the Destiny universe. And scions are no exceptions, considering that psionic energy is actually something that Nezarec uses. Within his boss fight at the end of Root of Nightmares, there's this mechanic where you are launched up into the air multiple times, right? And one of the players has to shoot his shoulders and shoot him in the chest to gain his aggro to stop you getting from blasted in the air. And you were blasted in the air using this purple psionic energy that scions usually use, right? They send out the mind wave that bumps you into the air, right? It's the same thing. Nezarec uses that exact same psionic energy. And when you look at the nameless gladiators, these Dredgens in training that you fight within the Equilibrium dungeon, and they prepare this, darkness blast where the shadow encompasses them, you actually see this purple psionic hue that encompasses them as well, that is present there alongside the shadow. And that is very, very reminiscent of psionic energy. And as we know from the dungeon lore, from the Sage Protector armor set, we know that the scions were avoiding these Dredgens because of the shadow and the whispers around them. So there's somewhere that the psionic energy is coming from, and it's not coming from the scions within the Barrent Imperium, because the scions are avoiding the Dredgens. So it has to come from somewhere else, and I think if you add these together, the whispers, the shadows, and the psionic energy, it makes the most sense that it's coming from Nezarec, because Nezarec uses psionic energy. The next bit of evidence I want to talk about is Yedic's first vision of the bird, the egg, and the heart. And to me, this is very, very reminiscent of Nezarec's curse. So if you guys remember, Nezarec's curse was this affliction that infected Mithrax. And it culminated in the events of episode Revenant, where Mithrax was basically being taken over and slowly controlled by Nezarec. And the curse acts as this means through which Nezarec could influence and control a person, with the eventual outcome of using their body and using their, the host's death, the afflicted person's death, to replace them and be brought back to life through that means, right? We saw at the end of episode Revenant, if it wasn't for the Echo of Reese cleansing Mithrax of the curse, Nezarec would have been revived. We saw Mithrax's shadow turn into Nezarec right before he got cleansed. So when you look at this vision of the bird plucking out its heart for the egg, and you look at that in conjunction to what Yedic said about Sarai, where Sarai, where if he were to die, he would have been replaced by something that was not the heart would take its place within the bird's ribcage. It's very, very reminiscent of Nezarec's curse. The person afflicted with the curse is eventually replaced by Nezarec. And finally, the last little bit of evidence I want to bring up here is from a lore tab I actually haven't talked about yet, because I wanted to use it as a bit of a nail in the coffin for my theory. And that is from the sparrow associated with the dungeon. And what's so special about the sparrow lore from the dungeon is that it talks about how Sarai is training a bunch of his new Dredgens. And it says in the lore tab, it says that you can hear a whisper under his power. It's on the edge of comprehension. And at the end of the lore tab, it says something that convinced me completely that Nezarec is in some way influencing the Dredgens. And I want to read that for you guys right now. So from the lore tab of the Arid Rambler, which is the sparrow for the dungeon, at the very end of the lore tab it says, a whisper rose under his power, just at the edge of perception, at the edge of comprehension. Sarai opened his hand and let the nameless Barent body fall. There is much work ahead of us, he said very softly. Even now, Bael's chosen dig for truth under Luna and beyond. If you hope to count yourself among them, you must earn your place. So Bael's chosen is searching for truth under Luna. Where is Nezarec's pyramid? Welp, it's under Luna. It's under the moon. So Bael's chosen, which is likely talking about more Dredgens, is looking for truth under Luna, likely within Nezarec's pyramid. You put all of this together, right? The whispers and the shadows, the psionic energy that the trainees, that the nameless barons, the nameless Dredgens are using within the dungeon, the bird and the egg and the heart vision that is very reminiscent of Nezarec's curse, and the sparrow lore, which is talking about how Bael's Dredgens, Bael's chosen, are searching for truth under Luna, which is where Nezarec's pyramid is. It all points you to Nezarec, and the likelihood, in my opinion, that he's going to be coming back in the future. And what makes me think Nezarec is actually coming back is from the final vision that Yedic has at the end of the armor set lore. I think the new vision that Yedic has at the end of the lore, it's pointing towards the prophecy of extinction. Because Yedic explains in the arms that she's fearful for life on Sol. And that in the class item, she says there's no more life left. And because we know that psionic visions can be prophetic in nature, she's potentially seeing a future timeline in which the prophecy of extinction was successful. And this is fueled by her fear associated with losing the life and soul. And it's fueled by this fear because we see that Yedic is influenced by the whispers at the end, right? And because Nezarec feeds off of fear, her fear for life on Sol, influenced by the whispers, is likely fueling this vision, this prophecy associated with extinction. And within this vision, we see, within this vision, Yedic talks about how there's a thought like a gravity well and that there are 6 legionaries. And I think the language of gravity well and the number of legionaries is very intentional, right? Obviously, we know that the 9 and their life is associated with the gravity well of their respective planets, right? And the number 6 is likely a connection where she's calling to 6, right? The member of the 9 associated with Saturn. And she might be, associating 6 itself linked with this future prophecy of extinction. That 6 is one of the causes of life disappearing from the system. But I think what's also intentional is the 6 legionaries, the language used to describe them is not singular, right? It describes 6 distinct legionaries. I think it might be pointing towards 6 individual people, characters who are in some ways responsible for the future extinction event. And now the question we have to ask ourselves is, who could these 6 characters be? I'm going to write down below here who I think it could be, right? So obviously we have Bael and his Dredgens, right? Bael / the Dredgens as one of the 6 legionaries responsible for extinction. You have 6 himself as one of the responsible members of the 9. I think you could rope Lord of Every Nothing into this. Lowen. I know some of you guys were mad that I was calling it Leon in the previous video. I'll call it Lowen for now to appease the masses here. Lowen. And what's so interesting is these characters do have some form of connection, right? Because Bael as the vessel for 6, and 6 and Lowen have a connection because of their proximity to one another and how 6 is learning sword logic from Lowen. Another character is, Maya Sundaresh. A part of the reason we have this whole prophecy of extinction in the first place is because Maya killed 3. And now we have 2 slots missing, right? Who could these final 2 people, who else could represent the last 2 remaining legionaries responsible for the prophecy of extinction? And I think based on everywhere the lore is pointing to associated with this armor set, is I think one of them could be Nezarec. And because Nezarec is now also associated with the Dredgens, we're once again seeing another bit of like an alliance forming between these 4 characters. Because Nezarec is influencing the Dredgens, which is also associated with Bael, who is associated with 6, and who 6 is associated with Lowen. Now Maya is a bit of a, a bit of a wild card here, but she's definitely involved in the Fate Saga and is responsible for prophecy of extinction in some way. Now we're just left with one last spot. And this, to me, right now, is a mystery. Who could be the final 6th legionary responsible for the prophecy of extinction? And that's the question I'm going to leave with you guys today for this theory video. I've pointed out my evidence and belief that the dungeon is pointing towards the Nezarec's potential return in the future of the Fate Saga, and how the vision at the end is pointing towards something to do with 6 distinct characters associated with the prophecy of extinction. And my question to you guys is, who is it? Let's think about this together. Let me know who you guys think the 6th legionary might be in the comments below. If you enjoyed the theory, I'd greatly appreciate it if you guys hit the like button and subscribe button down below. But that's all for me, guys, and I'll see you in a new video coming soon. Peace out.